It's 5 p.m. in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Here's what's coming up on the program. As the fires rage on in Los Angeles, a red flag warning comes into force from the National Weather Service in California. The ceasefire talks resume in Doha, Qatar. As mediator, Qatar says the deal is very close. Plus, U.S. Special Counsel report found President-elect Donald Trump engaged in criminal effort to overturn 2020 election. Once again, welcome to the World Today. Let's get right into it. And we still have our eyes on the wildfires raging through Los Angeles and California, the United States of America. Firefighters are facing a crucial day. Forecasters are warning that particularly dangerous winds in northwest LA could spread blazes. A red flag weather warning for wind gusts of up to 70 meters per hour has also begun. Elsewhere, LA residents have been told to stay indoors to avoid dust and ash. 2 large blazes and 2 smaller ones continue to burn, the biggest being the Palisades fire, which has destroyed more than 23,000 acres, and it's 14% contained at the moment. But at least 24 people have died in the fires, 23 others are missing, while more than 90,000 people have been evacuated on orders. And tracking the daily briefing from Palisades, Los Angeles, officials have confirmed that 14% of the fire there has been contained, though the city is bracing for another round of intense winds over the next days. Dry Santa Ana winds of up to 50 to 70 miles per hour was forecast to resume today, and the persistent would continue through Wednesday. So that's from Monday to Wednesday, and firefighters are now racing to contain the frontiers of 2 Los Angeles wildfires that started on January the 7th, taking advantage of a brief respite in hazardous conditions before high winds were expected to fan the flames again.
36 hours, we've seen very little fire growth on this incident, which is a positive. However, it's important to remember, as was just stated, we are still under a red flag event, and we will continue to surge resources to the priorities around this fire. The priorities right now are extinguishing any flare-ups around structures, responding to any hotspots on the interior around structures, and primarily building line for community protection. Those have been our priorities the last throughout this incident, but we've been able to achieve those priorities. We have a large number of resources. We're over 5,000 people at this incident right now, spread across the entirety of this incident and the fire line as well as interior.
As this wind event that we just heard about continues, we urge the public to stay diligent, to stay ready, as the danger has absolutely not passed. Please adhere to any evacuation warning and orders immediately, and prioritize your safety.
We regret to confirm that 5 deaths as of this afternoon have occurred within the LASD jurisdiction due to the Palisades fire. In collaboration with the Los Angeles County Fire Urban Search and Rescue Team and multiple other agencies, search and rescue operations began this morning in designated areas which were affected by the fire. These searches are part of a phased approach and will occur during daylight hours. Some of the numbers that are being reported are a combination of the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, and some numbers that you're seeing out there are a combination of the Sheriff's Department and LAPD areas. So only within the Sheriff's Department area of responsibility, we have had 5 deaths.
At this time, we have 26 people reported missing. 17 of those have been found safe. Of the 9 remaining, 2 have most likely been found deceased, but we have yet to be able to positively identify those individuals. 1 has likely been found safe at a shelter, but refused contact with the police, and 6 remain unaccounted for. Anybody who may have information on any of those 6, if you would, please let us know. In total, 3 fatalities were fire-related. 1 fatality died at a hospital, but had not been previously reported missing.
Well, officials also spoke of criminals taking advantage of the situation, looting shops and businesses there. But Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman says that there will be arrests made as the country unveils charges of burglary, looting in fire-ravaged neighborhoods. Mr. Hochman also details charges against several people arrested for looting homes after releasing footage from a resident's surveillance camera that allegedly captured one of those burglaries.
In both the Palisades and the Eden. Today we're here to announce that the promise that we made when we started this, that these criminals would be arrested, they would be prosecuted, and they will be maximally punished, is a promise we are keeping. As we announced today, the charges being filed on 10 different individuals, 9 of them for looting in both the Palisades and the Eden fires, and 1 for arson. And arson, by the way, not connected with the origination of the major fires, but an arson that occurred in Azusa. The first set of charges are against 3 individuals, Martrell Peoples, Damari Bell, and Travin Coleman. What 2 of these individuals did is on the night of both January 8th and the early morning hours of January 9th. They went ahead and committed first-degree residential burglary and looting during an emergency and evacuation situation in a house in Mandeville Canyon. They have been charged with first-degree residential burglary. They've been charged with looting. They've been charged with grand theft. They stole over $200,000, as been alleged by the charging documents. They went ahead and committed these crimes, and when they committed these crimes, as you're going to see on this TV screen right here to my left, it was caught on a Ring camera. If you can play that as we're speaking. And the LAPD, through, again, such impressive investigation, worked with various leads and tracked Mr. Peoples and Mr. Bell to an apartment in Koreatown. Surveillance was then conducted. When they attempted to leave, they were then apprehended, and a number of these stolen items from that residence was found with Mr. Peoples and Mr. Bell. Mr. Peoples is committed 2 prior violent or serious felonies. This is his 3rd. As a potential 3-strike person, he is looking at life in prison. This is an incident that occurred in Azusa, where Mr. Escobar has been charged with 3 different arson charges. He is looking at 9 years in state prison. This is arson that occurred at Pioneer Park in the city of Azusa. It was investigated by the Azusa Police Department, who acted very effectively and very efficiently in apprehending Mr. Escobar.
U.S. President Joe Biden says that tens of billions of dollars will be needed to restore Los Angeles to its pre-wildfire state after devastating fires in California. The president has pledged full federal support, promising the government will cover 100% of costs for firefighter overtime, debris removal, and temporary shelters over the next 180 days. He also called on Congress to provide the necessary funding for recovery efforts. Mr. Biden shared updates on the containment level of major California wildfires.
33% in the fire. First, I want to share an update on where things stand now, as we know. 1, over the past few weeks, state and local and federal firefighters are able to prevent the largest fires from moving into new areas. In other words, they're able to contain the fires. 14% containment in the Pacific Palisades that's how much has been contained. 33% in the fire in Pasadena. 95% in Sylmar. And the fire in Ventura has been 100% contained. And that's progress. And, although the federal government is going to cover 100% of the cost for the next 180 days for things like firefighter overtime pay, debris removal, temporary shelters, it's going to cost tens of billions of dollars to get Los Angeles back to where it was. So we're going to need Congress to step up to provide funding to get this done. And we're going to get that done, God willing. And I want to be clear, we're not waiting until those fires are over to start helping the victims. We're getting them help right now, as you all know. People impacted by these fires are going to receive one-time payment of $770, one-time payment, so they can quickly purchase things like water, baby formula, and prescriptions. So far, nearly 6,000 survivors have registered to do just that, and $5.1 million has gone out. And I encourage everyone who has been impacted to get assistance. The people of Los Angeles, thank you for sticking together, for helping one another through an unimaginable loss. And I want you to know, and I mean this, I want you to know we have no higher priority than the safety of you folks in Los Angeles. We're going to keep doing everything possible to help you get through this.
Well, another ripple effect of the fire is the Oscars rescheduling its own nomination ceremony because of the wildfires. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences has postponed the announcement of this year's Oscar nominations for a second time. The nominations for the film industry's highest honors will now be announced on January the 23rd. They originally had been set for this Friday, 17th of January, and then moved to January the 19th. But Academy CEO Bill Karma and Academy President Janet Yang said in a statement that they feel it is necessary to extend the voting period and move the date of nominations announcement to allow additional time for the members. The Academy also cancelled the annual Oscar nominees lunch, which had been set for February the 10th, and the Academy Awards telecast is still scheduled to take place on March the 2nd. Organizers of the Grammys say the music industry honors will also take place as planned on February the 2nd. Well, Maria Bird, that's Channel TV's correspondent, has been our ears and our eyes on the wildfires in California. She'll be bringing us up to speed. Hello, Maria. Thank you very much, and it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
How is the situation of things now? I mean, how is it now at this time? Officials are saying that 14% of the fire has already been contained. That's not an encouraging number if you ask anyone.
You are correct. It seems to be a bit low, but we know that these fires have been ravaging through, and at one point they were almost not able to contain any part of the fire. And so to see that slow progress, I think is some bit of hope. But what we do know at this time is that the winds are going to pick up today through Wednesday, which is going to create more challenge. And what they're basically stating that what you're showing right now with these fires, what they call are embers, that actually create almost like fireballs. And these fireballs, oftentimes with winds, create other fires because they move quickly through a community and could enter into another community. And that's how the fires are spreading so rapidly. And so they're really trying their best at this time to see how they can reduce the number of embers, if that is at all possible, to ensure that they're able to limit the number of additional fires that could start throughout the region of Los Angeles. So that's the focus now, is to really look at ways, as they cannot control the wind, but they know that they're talking about at least 24 hours of increased wind going throughout the area. Now, what this also will create is this will create a challenge with being able to drop water from helicopters. When the winds are at those increased and intense speeds, it does limit the amount of helicopters that can be up, if helicopters can be up at all, which then means that that is another way, a strategy that has been used for wildfires that they were not going to be able to use. So that then puts even more homes and more businesses and larger parts of the community at risk.
But Maria, help us understand the number of active fires that are still burning as we speak. We understand the weather service is already forecasting heavy winds of up to 50 to 70 miles per hour. That could even fan those flames more, but the winds are already even peaking as we speak.
Yes, there are. And so they're hoping that they won't see, 5 to 6 more. The challenge is the size of these fires. And so, as you mentioned, the number of fires, there's so many little fires. Oftentimes people will see a community that doesn't have a fire, but there could be down the hill that they see a small fire has started that they're able to put out. And so there's so many even small fires. But the challenge that they're facing is the small fires oftentimes can be addressed. It's the larger fires. And then even with smaller fires, if they're not able to get there quick enough to be able to put that fire out, and as we know, they are stretched with the number of fire trucks, the number of firemen, but we also know that they have obviously received global support and national assistance to be able to go out to address these fires. But if they don't have water, that creates another challenge. They really, at this time, a lot of the additional support around fire and safety personnel is really around their knowledge base of ways to be creative. We even saw a fire personnel that was able to go in someone's home, break their door down, and use their milk to actually put out a fire around a gas main area that was starting to get larger. But just with that 1 gallon of milk, they were able to put that out, which then saved almost an entire block from potentially having a gas explosion, which would have led to a very rapid fire spread on that block. So those are the types of things that obviously the fire personnel, those that are coming globally, can assist with additional strategies when they are seeing a depletion of water and inaccessibility to large volumes of water.
Well, Maria, let's take it from the angle of health this time. With this inferno, there are concerns of air pollution with smoke and soot. I mean, yesterday we saw a woman and her baby already complaining about how unbreathable the air is already in LA. But from what you hear, is the air breathable in that LA region?
So what we know is that California has struggled with air pollution for quite some time, which is why there are goals that Governor Newsom has put in place to have electricals, 100% electric vehicles in the state of California by a certain period of time, because they do suffer with increased smog and pollution. So this is even putting a greater strain on a situation that already is limited with clean, breathable air. This, for those who are asthmatic, have any other breathing challenges, this air is extremely dangerous and puts them at great risk. So that is another reason why you're seeing people move away from the region into communities where the air is less concentrated with the soot and the smog and those fumes from the fires. Because not only are we talking about smoke inhalation, which is damaging to lungs, but also when you think about the types of things that are being burned, when you think about the plastics and all of these very flammable, toxic, potentially fumes that are escaping, that puts another risk, a health risk to individuals, and especially, as you mentioned, the elderly and young, and the very young babies that are being born. So people are looking at ways, and if they should not only leave because of the fires, and maybe their home has not been in one of those evacuation areas, but due to the environmental concerns, having to leave as well is another major concern for many residents of California, and something that is going to be very hard to address until the fires are under control, or at least have a larger percentage of fires decreased.
All right, California, as we know, is a desert city, so the issue of water will definitely come up because it's an essential need. How are authorities coping with the usage of water?
Well, authorities are doing everything they can. There are 3 large tanks that hold millions of gallons of water. And typically, as we know, metropolitan fire hydrants are equipped to be able to put fires out for 2 to 3 homes. But when you talk about an entire region, and a large percentage of that region is almost on fire, these fire hydrants and those water tanks are not equipped to be able to handle, to dispense that amount of water. Now, they are trying to use the reserves. The reserves are being quickly depleted due to the number of fires that are underway and the amount of water that's needed. And then, of course, as we were mentioning a little bit earlier, typically for these wildfires, they typically use helicopter water drops to be able to assist those fire hydrants, and that has not been readily available throughout the entire time because of the high winds. And so they have been able to use them when winds die down, but when you have extreme wind temperatures, the helicopters being able to go up to do some of these drops has not been as readily available.
All right, thank you very much, Maria Bird, our Washington correspondent. Thanks a lot for your time. I'll definitely be getting back to you tomorrow for more details. Talks have resumed in Doha on a deal for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages. As key mediator, Qatar says that an agreement is very close. These are expected to be 3 phases to that deal. Well, the 3 hostages released on the first day of and Israel beginning to withdraw troops after that. Envoys for both the United States President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump have claimed credit for the progress of the talks. However, Qatari mediators say that both sides, and that's Israel and Hamas, could still get lost in the details and a deal could fall through. The war was triggered by Hamas's attack on southern Israel on October the 7th, 2023, where about 1,200 people were killed. 251 others were taken to Gaza as hostages. Israel launched a military offensive in Gaza in response to that. At the enclave's Hamas-run health ministry says that more than 46,500 people have been killed during the war.
Both the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration in the talks in the past couple of weeks, they have been involved fully in the talks. As I said, from the Biden administration and the incoming administration, they were working in tandem together here in Doha and beyond in the region to make sure that the deal happens.
And so other stories earlier, and President Joe Biden had said that a deal that will secure the release of hostages and achieve a ceasefire in Gaza was on the brink of coming to fruition, and that adding that his administration was working urgently to close that agreement. But analysts are saying that it is not the first time officials have talked about the prospect of a ceasefire, even if the mood does feel different this time.
The war between Israel and Hamas, on the brink of a proposal that I laid out in detail months ago, finally coming to fruition. I have learned many years of public service to never, ever give up. So I spoke to Prime Minister of Israel yesterday. I spoke to Emir Qatar today. I look forward to speaking with President Sisi soon. We're pressing hard to close this. The deal we restructured would free the hostages, halt the fighting, provide security in Israel, and allow us to significantly surge humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians who suffered terribly in this war that Hamas started. They've been through hell. So many innocent people have been killed. So many communities have been destroyed. Palestinian people deserve peace and the right to determine their own future. Israel deserves peace and real security. And the hostages and their families deserve to be reunited. And so we're working urgently to close this deal. To keep bringing countries together to deal with challenges posed by China. To make sure Putin's war ends.
Well, joining us now is Linda Gretstein, VOA correspondent in Jerusalem. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's good to see you. What more can you tell us about the Gaza ceasefire talks holding in Doha? I mean, participants and stakeholders, are they present?
So yes, Israel is there. In fact, the head of the Israeli Mossad and Shin Bet has been there now for several days, and officials from Hamas are also there. And you mentioned earlier that there have been previous times where they've come pretty close to a deal. This is basically the same deal that's been on the table since May, but this time does feel different. And this time it seems that they're just ironing out the final details, and all sides are sort of putting out reports that they expect a deal to be announced at least in the next day, 2 days, by the end of the week kind of thing, and certainly before President Trump takes office. And at least some of the reports say that the implementation of the deal could begin even on the first day, with 3 of the hostages being released in exchange for dozens of Palestinian prisoners being freed.
Yeah, Linda, I know that analysts have said it's not the first time officials are talking about the prospect of a deal like this, but is there a guarantee that this deal this time will mean the end of the war in Gaza?
No, there's no guarantee, because what's being agreed on now is the first phase of a deal, and in that first phase, 33 of the hostages will be released over a 6-week period, and Israel will gradually pull back its forces, and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be freed, and the amount of humanitarian aid going into Gaza will be sharply increased. 16 days into that deal, they will begin negotiations on the final 2 stages, which would eventually see the release of all of the hostages and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. But even after a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, Israeli officials have said that if Hamas fires 1 rocket, or if Israel sees that Hamas is beginning to rebuild in Gaza, it could, raid Gaza. It could move back in. At the same time, there does seem to be a sense that both sides want to see this war end, that Israel feels that whatever military goals it has met, it is not continuing to meet them, and that the death toll on both sides has just increased. In the last 48 hours, some 80 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas Health Ministry, and in the last week, more than, I think, something like 10 Israeli soldiers have been killed. So I think there's a sense on both sides that the war is not achieving anybody's goals at this point.
But a lot of people are already waiting on this deal. Families and hostages, families of hostages also, and also Gazans under Israeli bombardment. How are they reacting to the potential hope of even getting a deal, according to the Qatari mediator, in agreement to this deal?
I think everybody's kind of holding their breath. The hostage issue has been a very big issue for Israeli public opinion, with tens of thousands going out to demonstrate. Israel's a very small country, fewer than 10 million people, and almost everybody knows somebody who is a hostage or a family member of a hostage. Among the hostages are women. There are 2 young children, and I think what's been very hard for Israelis is they still say they have not received a list of who is still alive. Of the 94 hostages that are being held that Hamas had captured on October 7, 2023, at least 36 of them are dead, have been declared dead, although the number is probably higher. That said, there are these 5 young women soldiers who were intelligence forces and in a base in Israel who were kidnapped, and there have been some, reports of very difficult treatment for them, sexual violence. For Palestinians in Gaza, everybody knows somebody, again, who has either been killed, people have lost their homes. So they are very ready for the war to end. There's a woman I talked to in Gaza, she and her mother have been displaced 5 times. The prices for food have skyrocketed. Part of that is that Hamas is stealing the aid, or it's getting looted from other people. But they just want the war to end, and they want to sort of start to rebuild Gaza. The issue is that even if the war ends tomorrow, if there's a ceasefire, Palestinians are allowed to go back to their homes. Most of the homes in Gaza, according to the World Bank, something like 80% of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged. So it's not clear how the reconstruction of Gaza would begin, or where all of these, the 2.2 million residents of Gaza would live during the reconstruction, which is expected to last at least 3 to 5 years.
Linda, we've seen both sides. That's for the President Joe Biden and the President-elect Donald Trump. We've seen both sides coming to take glory for the progress of these talks, saying, they were the sides that made it happen. But Israeli mediators are Qatari mediators are already reminding reminding them that Israel and Hamas could still get lost in the details of these deals. So what should the two sides be focusing on at this time?
So I think that the idea of the mediators and the American idea is that once this starts, it will have a momentum of its own. And so rather than trying to iron out all the details of the final phase of the agreement, which would lead to all of the hostages being released and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, I think it makes sense to focus on the first stage, which would be a 6-week ceasefire, the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and the freedom for 33 hostages, most of whom are believed to be alive. And I think that, and then beginning the negotiations. And I think that a majority of the Israeli public supports a deal that would bring the hostages home. A majority of the Palestinian public supports an end to the war. And then there can be negotiations and discussions on who is going to govern Gaza, how Gaza is going to be reconstructed. But I think that getting to that first phase, and then hopefully that first phase kind of taking on a momentum of its own, and where both sides stop the fighting for 6 weeks, where Palestinians get a little time to breathe and get some more humanitarian aid, where Israelis begin to see their hostages coming home. Hospitals, by the way, in Israel are preparing for the return of the hostages, and each hostage will be in their own room with a doctor and a social worker. And of course, after 15 months of captivity, it will take a very long time for these hostages to be rehabilitated. But I think that for both sides, starting the process is the only way, and not trying to focus on the end game, at least at this moment.
All right, thank you very much, VOA's correspondent in Jerusalem, Linda Greston. Thanks a lot for your time and your lovely contribution on the World's Day.
Thank you.
Away from that now to other stories, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump would have been convicted of illegally trying to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election, which he lost, if he had not successfully been re-elected in 2024. And that's according to the man who led U.S. government investigations into him, Special Counsel Jack Smith. Mr. Smith wrote in a partially released report that the evidence against Mr. Trump was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. But then, President-elect Trump hit back, saying Mr. Smith was deranged and his findings were fake. Mr. Trump was accused of pressurizing officials to reverse the 2020 result, knowingly spreading lies about election fraud and seeking to exploit the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. Well, he denied any wrongdoing. But Mr. Trump, who was president at the time of the alleged crimes, subsequently spent 4 years out of office, but for successfully re-elected to the White House in November last year. He will now return to the presidency next week. Let's come back here in Africa. South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, the ANC, is at a crossroad. President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted the party is facing an existential crisis and must urgently renew itself to remain relevant or risk extinction. He was speaking during the party's 113th anniversary celebration in Cape Town. This call for renewal follows the ANC's historic defeat in the May 2024 elections, which led to the formation of a government of national unity. President Ramaphosa has pointed to the state of the economy, the unemployment crisis, as well as key factors behind the party's electoral decline.
The 2024 election has been characterized moment wherein the ANC should either renew itself or perish. And this is
And the South African government has launched a mission to rescue hundreds of miners trapped in an illegal mine where there is access to food and water and medicine was blocked last year in an effort to force them out. The operation began on Friday last week when the sister of one of the miners underground filed a case in court. This came in response to letters from Miners One, which claims that at least 109 people have already died at the gold mine located near Stiffontein, about 100 miles southwest of Johannesburg. But analysts are estimating that approximately 30,000 illegal miners are working in abandoned mines, producing up to 10% of the country's gold output.
It's long overdue. They have gambled with the life of our brothers, especially my brother. I didn't have a choice because we've been knocking in many doors, asking and pleading with them that, can you please assist us? The only thing that they could tell us is to smoke them out. They didn't care whether they come out alive. Basically, I will say that if we didn't take action, their plan was to kill them. I'm not happy. I'm not emotionally, I'm not okay because I don't know what to expect today. So I won't take long talking because I'm not in the right state at all because I'm scared, not knowing that what am I going to get, what am I going to see is still alive.
Court will be managing the case, and therefore what it means is that the respondents in the state, the police, and of course the mine owners, they are going to be reporting to court about the progress in terms of the process of rescuing these miners. The bloody evidence of their treacherous and I think cruel management of this operation, and in a form of these miners that have died. And I think we must say, even the 109 bodies are merely a tip of an iceberg, because many miners are dying from falling and drowning in the flooded areas of the underground tunnels. Their bodies are not evident, and many of them, their bodies are probably never going to be recovered.
From South Africa to Mozambique, where traditional dances graced the opening ceremony of Parliament in Maputo, the Mozambican capital. Proceedings were attended by the outgoing president of Mozambique, Jacinto Nyusi, and incoming leader Daniel Chapo. In spite of the widespread protest in the country, instigated by opposition leader Venancio Mondlane, but over the dispute on last year's election, which gave Daniel Chapo the victory, there have been violent protests by supporters about the election, high unemployment rate, low wages, and the rising cost of living. He returned from self-imposed exile, promising to challenge the results himself, and he comes as president-elect. Chapo's inauguration is scheduled for January the 15th. We continue the world today back here in Nigeria. The Gombe State government says it is perfecting plans to unlock the state's agricultural potential by leveraging on the vast water bodies that abound within the shores, one of which is the Balanga Dam. Constructed in 1984, Balanga Dam has a potential to cultivate 11,000 hectares of land in dry season farming and make critical contribution to the overall food security agenda of the federal government. But the dam has been performing below capacity over the years.
This is Balanga Dam, a gift of nature, beautifully nestled in the majestic mountains of Balanga local government area of Gombe State, Nigeria's northeast region. Its bubbling river, a historic home for fishing, transport and tourism, as its life-giving springs power villages in an all-year-round farming activity, creating thousands of jobs. With natural tributaries forming this dam, structures were built around it and officially commissioned in 1984 to scale up irrigation farming in the area to 11,000 hectares. But with the dam performing below its intended capacity, the Inua Yahya government says it is planning to get more from it.
This dam has the potential to cultivate about 11,000 hectares of land, but less than 2,000 was being utilized, so you can see what I'm talking about. The dam has its own challenges with respect to the canal. The canal is about 15 kilometers, and only 5 kilometers has been concretized. So the remaining 10 kilometers is not. So the flow of water is very slow. And as I'm telling you now, with the effort of His Excellency, the Agrisal project this year are going to commence the restoration of the canal. The remaining 10 kilometers that have not been concretized, they will ensure that the concrete has been put there. And what that means is that if it takes like almost a whole day for water to flow from the dam to the command side where the irrigation takes place, now it will just take some couple of few hours. And what that means again, we have more land to cultivate. So I'm very sure in the not long distant future, we'll be able to get to that 11,000 that we've been always saying is on paper.
In 1980s, how someone knew that this kind of...
This is Professor Daniel Uye, a researcher in smart agriculture and a faculty member, Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering, Michigan State University. He believes that Gombe State has what it takes to spark off an agricultural revolution that can feed West Africa.
I can tell you that Gombe is taking all the right, I want to say beyond the right steps. They are not only taking the right steps now, they are taking steps of centuries to come that would make Nigeria have a turnaround. And the good thing is, with His Excellency taking time to visit Michigan State University and meeting with the leadership and other faculty working in different areas, Gombe State would leapfrog with what all the actions I have seen the governor is taking here would not only feed Gombe State, but will have the potential to export food in the nearest future.
Touring Balanga and Dadinkowa dams, irrigation sites, local and modern rice processing plants, and the Muhammadu Buhari Industrial Park, Professor Uye lauds the visionary strides of the Noah Yahya government in promoting smart agriculture.
I saw a factory that has a capacity of 450 tons a day. That is a potential to export rice out of Nigeria, not just Gombe State. You know, back in Michigan State, where I come from and where we work, we have the harsh winter, which gives us a room of 3 to 4 months to grow food. But here we can cultivate crop all year round, 12 months. And then with water, if we can cultivate 3 rounds of rice paddy, that can feed that factory of 450 tons a day. And if you do the maths in your head of 450 tons of rice being produced a day, 365 days a year, that is the low-hanging fruit for Gombe State. It will create direct, indirect jobs. It will create revenue from the government from taxes. It would open up a lot of other economic activities and would keep everyone busy in this state.
The people of Balanga seem to be positively aligned with plans of the Noah Yahya administration to modernize the dam.
People of Balanga are very much eager to see the progress of Balanga Dam irrigation because most of our youths now are running away from our villages. Why? Because they were used to farming in the irrigation time. But now they have taken up to 3 to 4 years no irrigation. All of them were just stagnant. They are not doing anything.
It will generate more than 10,000 youth. It will engage them, this particular dam you are saying. Not only the irrigation they are talking about, but also the fishing activity, the recreational activity that it will generate and will attract. It will engage 10,000. So we are not talking about only people here in Balanga local government.
The Noah Yahya government says it is also exploring partnerships with relevant stakeholders to inject multi-billion-dollar investments into the Balanga Dam.
Well, let's jet out of Nigeria again, where NATO countries will be deploying frigates, patrol aircraft and naval drones in the Baltic Sea to help protect critical infrastructure and reserve the right to take action against ships suspected of posing a security threat. Alliance members, headed by its Secretary General, Mark Rutte, made this known at a press conference following an 8-nation meeting in Helsinki. The NATO alliance is taking the action dubbed Baltic Century in response to a string of incidents in much power cables, telecom links and gas pipelines have been damaged in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022.
We will continue to act robustly when critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea is in danger.
Safeguarding our infrastructure is of utmost importance. Not only is this crucial for energy supply, whether from power cables or pipelines, but more than 95% of internet traffic is secured via undersea cables. And 1.3 million kilometers of cables guarantee an estimated $10 trillion worth of financial transactions every day. Today, I can announce that NATO is launching Baltic Sentry. Under the authority of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, General Kiskavoli, this military activity is part of our ongoing effort to enhance maritime presence and monitoring of key areas for our alliance. It will involve a range of assets, including frigates and maritime patrol aircraft, among others, and will enhance our vigilance in the Baltic. Ship captains must understand that potential threats to our infrastructure will have consequences, including possible boarding, impounding, and arrest. And while such law enforcement roles are for national authorities, we are best served when there is complementarity between NATO's efforts to detect threats and deter aggression and national efforts to enforce the law.
The date has been set, it's in place, and the Baltics are also prepared for emergency decoupling if needed. But as said, the date is set and we are ready.
Well, as we wind down on the program, let's take a look at this picture. You are looking at an X-ray showing a set of dentures lodged in the throat of an elderly man in Peru. Well, that's the picture on your screen at the moment. An 81-year-old male patient from Hocho accidentally swallowed his dentures. He's a patient with a history of epilepsy, treated in an acid rig regularly. But the doctor says that during a convulsive episode, that's Hocho, on December the 13th last year, apparently expelled a dental prosthesis. That's what the patient thought, but what really happened was that he had ingested his foreign body. It had remained in his throat all the while, but thankfully, doctors were able to save him. Well, lucky him. But North Koreans across the country took part in mass exercises to mark the nation's first sports day of the year on Monday, January the 13th. At Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang, officials and workers from various national agencies and ministries staged a mass taekwondo demonstration while the group was seen jogging en masse on the road. Kim Song-cho, the vice chairman of the Central Committee of General Federation of Trade Unions of Korea, said the mass sporting event will allow participants to demonstrate the collective strength, the unity, and solid physical power they have built. Teachers and students at universities and schools across the country also took part in various sporting events and folk games. Finally on the program, vivid lanterns combining traditional Chinese cultural elements and modern technology have been set up in Zhejiang of South China's Sichuan province as the city gears up to host its long-running Spring Festival Lantern Show. The 31st International Dinosaur Lantern Show will officially open to the public on Friday, and that's according to the organizers, giving the visitors a chance to marvel at the dazzling displays. This event is coming as part of celebrations for the Spring Festival, the most important annual festivity in China, which centers around the Chinese Lunar New Year, which this year falls on January the 29th, ushering in the Year of the Snake. This year's show promises to be one of the best ever, boasting over a dozen giant lanterns and numerous large-scale displays which are sure to impress residents and, of course, tourists alike, which well over 200 smaller-sized lanterns featuring various intangible cultural heritage elements and modern lighting technologies are also included in this festivity. Well, you know, we always end on a bright note, and on that colorful note, we end the world today. For today, thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawado. Join us again tomorrow for another edition.